It's October 4th, 2016, and the Baltimore Orioles are in Toronto to take on the Blue Jays in the wildcard game. The score is all knotted up at 2 in the 11th inning, and out trots Ubaldo Jimenez. Jimenez did not have a good year in 2016, pitching to an ERA north of 5, yet here he is in this big moment on the road in front of over 49,000 rowdy fans. Why is he in? How did we get here? The Orioles entered the 2016 season coming off of an incredibly mediocre 2015 campaign, where they'd finish at exactly 500 to end the season, finishing in third place in the American League East. The offense was pretty damn good, led by Chris Davis, who popped 47 home runs and finished top 15 in the MVP voting, and the young Manny Machado. The bullpen was good, but the rotation wasn't, and that all led to the 81-81 record we saw them finish in. Naturally, there weren't too many expectations heading into the 2016 season. The Red Sox were entering David Ortiz's final season and had just signed David Price to a massive deal in free agency. The Yankees are always expected to win, and Blue Jays were 2 games away from winning the pennant in 2015, so they were expected to be good too. The Red Sox ended up winning the most games in the division. The Rays finished in dead last, so it was pretty much a dogfight for who would be the 2 wildcard teams between the 2 bird teams and the Yankees. The Yankees ended up finishing 5 games back of both the Jays and Orioles, setting up the wildcard game to be played in Toronto with the Blue Jays owning the tiebreaker. The success of the 2016 Baltimore Orioles was a fascinating one, at least to me. Although Chris Davis wasn't nearly as productive as the 2015 version of himself, he still put up good enough numbers in 2016, but this time had a lot more around him. Manny Machado was Manny Machado, but then you had guys like Mark Trumbo and Hyun-Soo Kim coming out of the clouds to become a vital part of that Baltimore lineup. Pedro Alvarez, in his very first year not playing for the Pirates, was a really solid bat too. Jonathan Scope played in every game, driving in 82 runs. Longtime Oriole Adam Jones did his thing. It was a good lineup. Mark Trumbo was one of the main talking points of that offense. In 2016, Trumbo may not have hit for a good batting average, and he wasn't an on-base guy, but the man could slug, connecting for 47 home runs in 159 games, driving in 108 runs. The way of not getting on base at too good of a rate, but slugging pretty well, was the theme of the Orioles lineup other than Machado and Kim. Overall, despite hitting to an on-base percentage of just .317 as a team, the Orioles combined for 253 home runs. As for the rotation, it wasn't the best. Kevin Gossman and Chris Tillman were good that year, both pitching to an ERA around 3.7 and throwing around 170 innings each. Good and reliable at the top of the rotation. Beside them, absolutely nothing to gloat about. The other 4 starters on that team had an ERA over 5, every single one of them. Because of this, Orioles manager Buck Showalter had to rely on his bullpen for more innings than probably typical. As a starter, Dylan Bundy threw a little over 70 innings with an ERA around 4.5, and as a reliever, threw 38 innings with an ERA around 3. Vance Worley threw over 86 innings with a 3.5 ERA. Michael Givens was solid in about 75 innings, and then you had the 2 men who pretty much carried the entire pitching staff: Brad Brock and Zach Britton. Without Brock and Britton in 2016, the Orioles don't make the postseason. It's that simple. What they did to help out not just the bullpen, but the entire pitching staff was incredible. In 2016, Brad Brock threw 79 innings to the tune of a 2.05 ERA, striking out 92 hitters. As for Zach Britton, he had one of the greatest seasons in baseball history for a reliever. Britton was simply incredible in 2016. In 69 appearances, Zach Britton pitched to a microscopic 0.54 ERA in 67 innings, recording 47 saves, which was the most in the American League. He was able to strike guys out while also getting a ton of weak contact for outs. You just simply could not barrel him up, being the best closer in baseball by far that season. He actually also went on to finish 4th in the American League Cy Young voting, was an All-Star for the 2nd time in his career, and finished 11th in the MVP voting. Getting Cy Young and MVP votes as a relief pitcher is of course incredibly rare, but Britton was just that dominant in 2016. All of this led to an 89-win finish, tied in 2nd place with the Blue Jays, and with the Jays winning the season series against Baltimore, to Toronto for the wildcard game we'd go. It was a back and forth battle, starting with a Jose Bautista home run in the 2nd. None other than Mark Trumbo would then line one over the left field wall for a 2-run shot to give the O's the lead, with the Jays knocking Tillman out of the the game in the 5th, tying the game at 2, and it would stay that way for a little while. Despite not doing anything offensively, the Orioles kept the dangerous Blue Jays lineup quiet as well, thanks to Michael Givens, Brad Brock, and Darren O'Day. Michael Givens shoved it, throwing 2 1/3 innings with 3 strikeouts, being taken out for the lefty Donnie Hart to come in and get the final out in the 7th, but not before a beer can would be thrown at Hyun-Soo Kim from the left field stands, of course much to the displeasure of Kim and Adam Jones. Things were getting intense. With the game still tied at 2 in the 8th, in came Brad Brock, and he held their offense down too, throwing an inning and a third and striking out a couple Blue Jays. With runners on first and second and just 1 out, in came Darren O'Day to get the inning-ending double play to send the game to extras, going on to throw a scoreless 10th inning and send the game to the 11th. The Orioles failed to score, and after recording the first out of the bottom half of the inning, in came Ubaldo Jimenez. Like I said earlier, the Orioles had 4 starting pitchers with an ERA over 5 in their rotation, with one of them being, of course, Ubaldo Jimenez. Yet here he was in a do-or-die playoff game that was tied. Why is this? Buck Showalter is a good manager, and has been his entire career. Throughout his managerial career managing the Yankees, Diamondbacks, Rangers, Orioles, and now Mets, Buck has a winning percentage of over .500, has made the postseason 5 times, and has won the Manager of the Year award 3 times, including the 2014 Orioles who won the AL East that year. The way he managed that 2016 team in particular was really well done, considering he only had so many guys to rely on in the pitching staff. Yet here we are in the most important game of the season, and Zach Britton has still yet to pitch. Britton was totally fine, nothing was wrong, but it was clear what Buck was doing, waiting for the Orioles to have a lead before putting in his best pitcher, rather than put him in to preserve the tie, and it couldn't have backfired any more than it did. A 1-1 base hit off the bat of Devin Travis, followed by a first pitch single from Josh Donaldson, would put runners on the corners for Edwin Encarnacion to ambush the first pitch from Jimenez, catapulting it into the Toronto night, walking it off, and sending the Blue Jays to the ALDS. It took just 5 pitches for Jimenez to give up 3 runs, all while the best reliever in baseball that year watched from the bullpen. Buck, of course, got a ton of heat for his decision to keep on waiting to bring Britton in the game, and he'd eventually go on to admit that he actually regrets not bringing him in when the game was tied. Obviously, a little late for that, but I think it shows that he learned from the situation. Side note, but that's one of the cooler things about baseball. The fact that even a veteran and someone who's been in the game such a long time like Buck Showalter is still learning this game, as nobody will ever be perfect at it, no matter how talented you are and whatever part you play in baseball. The 2022 New York Mets are Showalter's 5th team to make it to the postseason. And although this team is much more talented than that 2016 Orioles team on paper, they both have something big in common, and that's the closer. Edwin Diaz has arguably been the best closer in baseball this season. He happens to play for Buck Showalter, and I'm going to bet that Buck won't be as hesitant to use his best option with the game tied this October if given the chance. It's pretty crazy to think that a wild card game between the Baltimore Orioles and Toronto Blue Jays will have helped the New York Mets 6 years later, yet here we are. Don't screw it up this time, Buck.